So you're thinking about making a career switch to a job that's well suited for your skills. Or maybe you just got that new job and these nagging thoughts start creeping up in your head. I'm not good enough for this, and I don't belong here. That's imposter syndrome talking. And today we're going to talk about how you can tackle it head on. So when these thoughts come up in your mind, you know what to do with them to overcome them and stay on the path to success. Hi, I'm Kristin. Imposter syndrome is this way of thinking that despite all of your skills and success, you're not actually qualified. It feels kind of like you're getting away with something, and that if someone were to find out, you'd be exposed as this major fraud. People with imposter syndrome usually credit any type of success they get to things like luck or timing and not their actual qualifications. But in reality, these people are usually high achievers that end up completely overworking to kind of overcompensate for these feelings. You can kind of think about it like you're this bright light, and imposter syndrome is this shadow standing in your way, dimming your light so that your full shine isn't visible. So today we'll talk about how you can manage imposter syndrome so that it doesn't keep you from succeeding. The first thing to understand about imposter syndrome is that if you're feeling it, you're not alone. So many different types of people experience or feel these feelings at different times in their life. And there's this myth that successful people don't feel imposter syndrome. And it makes sense that it's a myth because if you think about the most successful person you know, it's probably hard to imagine that they've ever felt like you did or doubted their abilities or skills. But in reality, the opposite of this misconception is more likely to be true. And really, those who have had some type of growth or success have likely felt imposter syndrome at some point in their life. And that's because imposter syndrome really tries to have us doubt our abilities and our accomplishments. It comes up in times of change, like a career change or receiving a promotion or some praise or getting new responsibilities. It's going to have you question your self-worth. And so many other people feel this feeling. But if you don't believe me, check out some responses from those we surveyed when they talked about how they felt when they experienced imposter syndrome.
I don't deserve to be here.
If I ask for help, they're going to see me for the fake I am.
Anyone would be better at this than me.
I'm not good or smart enough.
They're going to regret hiring me.
They're going to ask me a question I can't answer.
As you can see, these thoughts and feelings aren't all that uncommon, unfortunately. And the truth is that if you're feeling some type of self-doubt, you're probably moving in the right direction if your end goal is to experience some type of growth or transformation. Really, if you're feeling imposter syndrome, remember that it's coming up in times in your life where your success or qualifications might come into question, maybe just from yourself. But what's important is to understand that this is a challenge that you're going to need to overcome. And as you start challenging these thoughts, you're going to feel like less of an imposter when you do it enough. Now, if you have imposter syndrome, you're probably thinking, well, what if I don't have imposter syndrome? What if I really just am an imposter? And that's a feeling that somebody with imposter syndrome would feel. So let's talk more about it and some signs of imposter syndrome to get you a better idea of what it is and what people experience when they're feeling it. A big sign of imposter syndrome is self-doubt. So doubting that you have the skills and knowledge and qualifications, even though you do, and there's a lot of evidence of your success. Another sign is fear of failure. So oftentimes people with imposter syndrome are so scared to fail that they don't take risks. They're so scared of making mistakes that they're scared that if they do new things or try new things or try to develop their skills, that they're going to fail and show everybody that they really are an imposter. And with that comes perfectionism. Because you're so scared to make mistakes and fail, you try to make everything perfect, almost to a point where it's kind of hindering. You're spending too much time doing it. You're spending time on little unnecessary details when you could be doing other things for your work. You could be spending time developing your skills, but instead you're focused on these minute details that probably don't matter. Next is downplaying your successes and achievements. So basically, anytime you get some sort of praise or you have some type of accomplishment, you're just downplaying it, saying, oh, that's still not good enough, or I bet you a teammate could do better than me. And with that comes constant comparison to others. So you might be thinking, yeah, a teammate could definitely do this better than me. And that might actually be true. Sometimes you might have an expert teammate on your team that's really good at something in particular. And maybe you don't take on a new project related to that because you think they could do better. But in reality, that can really hinder you. And so let's talk about some negative effects of imposter syndrome. And if you don't tackle these things, if you don't really take action to take these things on to combat these signs, what can happen? So a major negative effect of imposter syndrome is obviously low confidence. If you're doubting your skills and abilities constantly, you're going to start to feel less confident. You're going to continue to be less confident. You're not going to grow in your confidence. Another negative effect, obviously, is stress and anxiety that's going to stem off that completely. If you're feeling like this all the time, you're going to have stress. You're going to have anxiety, especially related to your work and the quality of your work, which also comes into overworking to prove your worth and avoid failure. So this again goes into perfectionism. So you're so scared of making mistakes that you're overworking. You don't want to fail. You don't want to make mistakes. And because of that, you're working too much to avoid that from happening. Another negative effect is self-sabotaging your successes and opportunities. So we just talked about, a coworker who has this great skill. And if you get asked to do something similar, you don't take on that project because you feel like they would be better at it. And when that happens, you don't grow, you don't take risks, you're not learning new things. And because of that, you're almost wasting the opportunity. You're not helping yourself grow or learn. And in reality, you're kind of feeding into your own imposter syndrome. And next, burnout. This can all lead to burnout, which is really what we don't want, because that's when we stop loving the things that we love. We stop wanting to do it. We stop wanting to work. And so really all of that hard work, all of that perfectionism means nothing because you don't want to do it anymore. You're so stressed. You're so burnt out. You don't want to feel this anyway, or you don't want to feel this way anymore, that you're done. If these signs and negative effects seem familiar to you, you're going to want to know how to deal with these feelings when they come up. So let's talk about how to tackle imposter syndrome head on. The first thing that you want to keep in mind is that you have to have self-compassion, which can be really hard. Remember that growth often triggers self-doubt, and these new experiences are going to make us feel inadequate. So keep that in mind and remember to be kind to yourself. We are our own worst critics, and oftentimes we're thinking these things about ourselves, and other people are thinking the same things about themselves, and they're so immersed in thinking about themselves and what they're lacking that they're not recognizing it in you. So keep that in mind. The next thing to keep in mind is that growth takes time. So as always, growth isn't going to happen in a day or a week or even a month. Sometimes, often it takes a while. So keep that in mind. You're not going to be an expert in one day. Now, the second thing to keep in mind is that you should build your network. Now, when you're doing things like transitioning careers, you are often going to follow the experts, and that's great. You should absolutely learn from those with your desired knowledge and skills, because that's how you build role models. That's what you see what the expectations are and learn from others. But what's also important is that if you're only following experts or interacting with these experts, it's going to trigger your imposter syndrome because you're going to be thinking, I can never be like them. So what you also want to do is make sure that you connect with people with similar goals to you. So people who are also transitioning careers, or people who at least have the same things that they want to achieve, because oftentimes these people are going to be your support system. So you're going to be able to talk to them when you're feeling these things. And it's very likely that they're going to feel these things too. You really want to make sure that you build that network that you can feel safe in, but also a network that you're going to want to learn from. And following both experts and interacting with people with similar goals to you is going to help you do that. Now, the next thing that's super important, especially if you want to deal with imposter syndrome head on, is to pinpoint the triggers. So you want to ask yourself things like, when have I felt undeserving of my accomplishments? And when do I downplay my skills and successes? This can help you identify times when you felt it so that you can better identify when you experience it. But what's also really important is that when you do experience it, make sure to document it when you're feeling it. Write it down in a journal, write down the thoughts that you're thinking. And if you're anything like me, you're probably thinking, yeah, I'm never going to write that down in a journal ever. And that's okay. Write it down in your notes app, write it down somewhere that's easy and convenient to you, where you're going to write it down and you're going to kind of hold yourself accountable for understanding more about yourself. Because what's most important, the reason that you want to write it down, is because you want to be able to recognize patterns. You want to reflect on those patterns to, again, identify the thoughts that you think, identify when these thoughts come up, because it's going to better help you deal with these types of thoughts and feelings. Now, after you pinpoint the triggers, you're going to want to reframe your thinking. So to reframe your thinking, there's a couple of things that you want to keep in mind. The first is that you need to identify your worth beyond your achievements. Achievements are important. Success is important, but it shouldn't be the only thing that defines our worth. You also want to make sure that you're looking at failure a little bit differently too. Oftentimes we think, I made a mistake, I'm a failure, and that's not the case. So keep in mind that you need to stop seeing mistakes as failure and use them for growth. Oftentimes we learn from mistakes, we learn from failure. And so the more you recognize that, the less you're going to fear making mistakes and try to be such a perfectionist that you don't grow. So here's an example of how you can reframe this thought. So I don't deserve to be here turns into I was hired for my skills. And again, if you're anything like me, you're probably thinking, okay, just reframing my thinking isn't going to do anything. That's just, false positivity. And that might be right if you do it once. But the more you do this, the more you get in the habit of recognizing your thoughts, identifying those triggers and challenging it, you're going to be much more confident, and you're going to either be able to stop thinking those thoughts or at least deal with them and challenge them in the moment and feel them less. After you reframe your thinking, you want to set goals for yourself, and SMART goals is a great way to go. So let's talk about what SMART goals are if you don't know or have never heard of them before. So SMART goals is a criteria for writing well-designed goals. So it's basically a formula to set your goal up for success. So this is what it stands for: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And I love achievable here. I love all of the words here, but achievable is important because oftentimes when you think goal setting, you think, I'm going to set a goal for 6 months away or a year away. And that's okay to do that. But what's also important is to set small, achievable goals, because when you achieve these things, it's going to help you feel more confident. So here's an example of a SMART goal. Let's say you are brand new to a company and they're really good with AI. They have all of these tools and you're thinking, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. I was not hired for this. Well, instead of just believing that, challenge your thoughts, set a goal for yourself to get better at AI. So here's what that looks like. Generate an AI image using your own prompt and include it in a piece of work within the next month. So that way you set a goal, it's a month away, and it's a goal that you can achieve. So let's look at how to track your achievements and how this goal can be tied into achievements. So I'm going to show you 2 achievement trackers. This one goes hand in hand with the SMART goal. So tracking your achievements is really going to show you or help you feel more confident in the things that you have achieved or succeeded in. Here's an example of a SMART goal achievements tracker. So again, we're going to use that goal that we just shared. Let's say it's the end of the month and the goal was met. And then you're going to write down the skills you demonstrated. So generation of photorealistic AI images using FreePix AI image generator, as well as a prompt refinement to better align with the desired output. So those are 2 skills that are really important. But in addition to the skills, you want to track your achievements. So what was the benefit of this? What did you achieve? So I generated 2 AI images and included them in a job aid to visually reinforce key concepts. And not only that, but taught 2 team members how to use FreePix AI image generator, because maybe your teammates asked you, right? And you were able to teach them that skill. So obviously this is a really specific example, but what's most important is that you create a tracker that works for you, whether it's this one or something else. Now let's get into the other tracker. And you might be thinking, okay, well, that's great. This is what I can do on the job, but what about now? I'm trying to transition careers. So I have one that will help you kind of look at your transferable skills. So here it is. So this is a success tracker. So let's look at how this works. So we have the date here, followed by the success, created a 2-minute video tutorial showing students how to submit an assignment in the LMS. So this is for someone transitioning from teaching to instructional design. So they have this success, but how does it relate? How is it important to instructional design, the career they want to go in? Well, they edited, trimmed, and combined MP4 clips using Adobe Premiere Pro. That's absolutely a transferable skill, as well as applied Mayer's multimedia principles to reduce cognitive load. Notice that these aren't saying I'm a pro in Adobe Premiere, but these are helping you understand what you're able to do, what you're good at. But even more importantly, let's talk about the impact, because that's a lot of the times what your interviewers are going to care about. So what's the impact? What are the results of this? So with that development, significantly reduced student questions and emails about assignment submission from 12 to 15 to 1, minimizing the need for further clarification. So not only are you're tracking your successes, but you're tracking your skills, you're tracking the impact so that you can really be proud of your achievement and recognize it and not think, oh, that's not good enough. At least it's there. At least you're tracking it. Now, the last thing that you want to keep in mind is you have all of these achievements, you challenge your thoughts, but what else can you do to really show your success and be proud of it? Well, something you can do is create a portfolio of your work. Most portfolios nowadays are online because they're easy to access and easy to update and edit it, and everyone can see it. It's not like a portfolio back in the day where you had this book that you shared with people. Now it's really easy to make a portfolio. So develop a portfolio that showcases your work and your achievements. The more you're able to do that, the more you're able to display your work and achievements. Not only are you going to be able to talk to them, but your work is going to speak for you. It's going to show what you can do and, again, help you feel a little bit more confident about what you actually can do. So overall, stop letting imposter syndrome dim your light. When you're feeling like an imposter, take control. Start by being kind to yourself and then identify what's causing those thoughts and feelings and track your achievements so that you can challenge your thoughts with real evidence of your success. I love being part of the ID Bootcamp and watching people develop their skills and knowledge. They develop these great portfolios that helps them really showcase their transferable skills so that when those thoughts come up, that serves as a good reminder of their success. If you're interested in learning more about the ID Bootcamp, be sure to check out the link below. Otherwise, your next best step is to start building your ID knowledge and skills. So you can do that by downloading the Become an ID checklist linked below. And if you've ever felt imposter syndrome before, how did you cope or overcome or manage it? I'd love to hear about it in the comments, so leave a comment below and tell me your experience. I can't wait to hear about it, and I will see you next time.